Later today, we expect to hear from pro-Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil. Khalil was released yesterday after 104 days at an immigrant detention facility following an order from a federal judge to set him free. He was flown to New York and reunited with his wife and given an opportunity to finally see his son, who was born while Khalil was in custody. He gave brief remarks to the press that were gathered outside the ICE facility in Jenner, Louisiana, where he was held.
The moment you enter this facility, your rights leave you behind. So once you enter there, you see a different reality, just a different reality about this country that supposedly champions human rights and liberty and justice. But once you cross literally that door, you see the opposite side of what actually happening on this country under just the eyes of everyone.
Now, the government justified Khalil's deportation by claiming he posed a risk to national security, though he was never actually charged with any crime. The government is appealing his release order. But across the country, President Trump's aggressive deportation drive is catching all sorts of people in its dragnet. In San Diego, Syed Nasser, an Afghan man who worked alongside U.S. troops in Afghanistan, was detained by ICE agents after attending a mandatory immigration hearing in court. In his asylum application, he said the Taliban abducted his father, killed his brother, and would target him if he were forced to return to Afghanistan. The hearing he attended was required to proceed with his asylum claim. ICE has increasingly turned to this tactic of picking up immigrants attending court hearings to earn legal status and then targeting them for deportation instead. That's exactly what happened to 19-year-old recent high school graduate Emerson Colindrez. He was 8 years old when his family fled violence in Honduras and settled in Ohio. In 2023, a judge denied his family's asylum application, but his deportation was delayed and he was instead given a schedule to check in with ICE. His soccer coach had been attending these meetings alongside Colindrez, his star player, to help with morale. They went together on June 4th when Colindrez was instead arrested. He has now since been deported back to Honduras. Our next guest, Dara Lind, writes in the New York Times that this treatment of non-citizens, despite their good deeds or their attempts to follow the rules alongside the crackdown on protesters, denigrates the value of American citizenship itself. Quote, all of this adds up to an insistence not only that non-citizens do not count as persons with the rights the Constitution guarantees, but also that no one can hold the government accountable for what it does to non-citizens. I will not be arrested and deported for writing this essay. In that respect, the legal value of my citizenship remains secure. But what that citizenship is worth on a deeper level feels imperiled. Joining me now is the author of that opinion piece in the New York Times, Dara Lind. She's the senior fellow at the American Immigration Council, and Ray Suarez, the host of Wisdom Keepers on PBS and the author of the book, We Are Home, Becoming American in the 21st Century. Thank you both for being here. Dara, starting with you, talk to me about the thesis of the piece that you wrote for the Times, especially when you wrote, quote, when rights erode for some of us, something corrodes in all of us.
Thank you so much for having me on and for allowing me to explain all of this. What I'm arguing is that there's really always been a kind of gray area when it comes to non-citizens. They haven't really had all of the rights that citizens have. What Mr. Khalil said, that, you know, once you step into the detention facility, you become aware of kind of the underside of that. That's always been true to a certain extent. What this administration is doing is arguing not only that non-citizens have no rights, but that lack of accountability that you mentioned means that citizens can't even use their rights to stand up for their non-citizen neighbors. And so that's the connection we see between the aggressive tactics that you've described about the detention and deportation of non-citizens and the arrest of people like New York City Comptroller Brad Lander and others who have been just trying to escort non-citizens or trying to observe what the government is doing.
Ray, Dara talks about the remarks from Mr. Khalil, and I want to play a little bit more and get your reaction to more of what he had to say outside the ICE facility yesterday.
I leave some incredible men behind me, over 1,000 people behind me, in a place where they shouldn't have been, in that place, in the first place. I hope the next time that I will be in Jina is to actually visit this museum that's a testimony on America's racist policies against immigrants.
Listening to that and thinking about the fact that Khalil was only released pursuant to the order of a federal judge, what's your takeaway there?
There are a lot of things that are wrong with this case. For one, this man was a legal permanent resident. And for all the talk you hear about, well, we want people to do it the right way. Mahmoud Khalil was a legal permanent resident, married to a citizen. He's not been accused. He's not been arraigned. He's not been tried. He's not been convicted of any crime. And yet he just spent more than 3 months in a penitentiary, thousands of miles away from his family. For why? For why, you might ask? To show that you can get away with the kind of cruelty that Dara Lind talks about in her essay. You know, the administration is a little sensitive about this. You can tell. This is why they laid down the predicate, why they tried to create the groundwork in the first place by saying that we were under invasion, that this was a national emergency. What that does is try to make it possible to turn to the people and say, we can do anything because this is an emergency. That's what's dangerous about this moment.
So, Dara, Ray brings up a very good point in that there is a very hairpin trigger, it seems, with respect to how this administration is reacting to this issue, the pushback from the judiciary. And in this case, there was an order for Khalil's release from a federal judge, and then the reaction from the administration was to call the judge rogue. And we've seen this before. And it seems to play into the argument that you made in your piece that they are really demanding both absolute power and absolute immunity. Is that a real fair way of how we're seeing this play out?
Rhetorically, yes. Politically, what the administration says is that no decision that the judiciary makes that goes against them could possibly be legitimate, that the judiciary has no right to even be considering any of their treatment of non-citizens, that it's totally beyond their control. But when they get into court, they're playing it a little bit differently. They are challenging any decision that goes against them. They're challenging it very aggressively. They're having trouble admitting any errors, as we saw in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, where the attorney who initially said, yes, it was a mistake to deport him, got fired. But they are still playing by the rules. We don't yet have them standing up in court and saying, we don't think that you are legitimate. We think that this order is illegitimate. That is the line they have not yet crossed.
Ray, talk to me about the convergence of who is actually being shown as the focus of these deportation efforts and how that othering of immigrants plays a role in terms of the public narrative that this administration has tried to advance around why this is such a necessity.
You know, a lot of this was predictable and warned about in the run-up to the arrival of the Trump administration for their second go-round starting in January. The idea that in a sort of mass, undefined way, this large number of undocumented people in the country was a problem, was a crisis, was a danger, that kept being stressed to Trump voters and to people who were on the edge in this issue, who generally think, well, people should follow the law, people should play it straight, and have a general support for the idea that we should know who's in the country. It's a fair thing. Every country has a right to control its borders and know who's inside its borders. But here's where the problem arises when you start breaking your own rules in order to do enforcement. And when people who generally support the idea of getting people out and then watch one of their neighbors being hustled into a van by masked men, an unmarked van, while their children scream and cry on the front lawn, they say, oh no, Maria is a great person. Javier is a great person. Mariam and Khalid take nice care of their property. Their kids go to school with my kids. When it becomes personal, then it becomes seeable. as an issue in a way that it wasn't when we were talking about 15 million people or 20 million people, whatever number the administration chose to use today. Here's where the rubber meets the road, and it's getting ugly. Thousands of ICE teams out there, people who don't have to identify themselves, people who don't have to wear marked uniforms, don't have to have badge numbers, don't have to say why they're picking you up. This is secret police stuff, and it's a problem.